Max lay on the cold concrete floor of the shelter, ears twitching at the constant barking around him. The scent of disinfectant mixed with the damp musk of too many dogs crammed into too little space. He had been here too long. He had watched countless others leave, tails wagging as they disappeared to the front door with their new families. But for him, no one came. He wasn't a puppy, and he wasn't friendly in the way people wanted. He had been trained to obey, to assess threats, to respond with precision. That kind of dog didn't make for a good pet. The volunteers tried their best. They spoke to him in soft voices, offered him treats he rarely took, but he saw it in their eyes. Pity. They thought they knew him, a lonely, unwanted creature waiting for a home. They didn't understand. He wasn't waiting. He was watching. It was early evening when the man arrived. Unlike the usual adopters, he didn't browse the cages, cooing over small, playful puppies. He walked with purpose, straight toward Max's kennel, his eyes sharp and calculating. Max lifted his head, ears forward, muscles tensing instinctively. The man knelt, meeting Max's gaze through the metal bars. German Shepherd male, about 5 years old, the shelter worker beside him said. Trained but difficult. He's been here longer than most. The man didn't respond immediately. He studied Max, his expression unreadable, then said, "I'll take him." The shelter worker hesitated. "He's not." "I'll take him." There was something in the man's voice that silenced further argument. Within minutes, the papers were signed and the door to Max's kennel swung open. He didn't move at first. Something about this felt different. The man didn't hold out a treat, didn't call him in a high-pitched, encouraging tone. He simply stood back, waiting. A test. Max stepped forward cautiously, his keen instincts telling him that, for the first time in a long while, he wasn't the one assessing the situation. He was the one being assessed. The ride was quiet. The man didn't speak, and Max didn't fidget. He sat in the back of the sleek black vehicle, his body still, but his mind racing. Something was off. The car barely made a sound, the dashboard illuminated with unfamiliar symbols. The air inside smelled different, not just of leather and metal, but of something faintly sterile, like a place where precision mattered more than comfort. Max watched the road unfold to the tinted windows. They weren't heading toward a neighborhood, nor even a countryside home. The city lights faded behind them as they drove down an isolated road, leading to a structure surrounded by a high, seamless fence. There were no other houses, no street signs, just a single gate that slid open as they approached, allowing them inside without pause. Max tensed. He had been trained to recognize secure facilities, and this was one. The car came to a stop, and the man opened the door, stepping out first. He turned, meeting Max's gaze. "Come." The command was firm, unyielding. Not an invitation, but an expectation. Max obeyed, jumping down with smooth efficiency. The ground beneath his paws was solid metal, embedded with tiny lights that flickered as they walked. The air had a faint hum, like the whole place was alive in a way buildings shouldn't be. The doors opened automatically, revealing a vast, open space. It was nothing like a home. No furniture, no personal touches. The walls were smooth and curved, lined with screens displaying complex data streams. Machines moved in near silence, some hovering, others gliding on thin mechanical limbs. Max's ears twitched. He detected no immediate threat. Yet everything about this place set his instincts on edge. The man walked ahead, unconcerned, leading him deeper inside. As they entered a new room, a voice filled the space, not spoken, but emanating from everywhere at once. "Welcome back, Dr. Carter." Dr. Carter. Max glanced at the man, filing the name away. The voice, though synthetic, carried an odd warmth, like it was more than just a machine. "The subject has arrived," Carter responded. Subject. Max stiffened. He had heard that word before. In training facilities, in research labs. He was not a pet. He was an experiment. Carter turned to face him fully now, hands in the pockets of his dark coat. "You've been selected for something important, Max. You don't understand yet, but you will." Max didn't move. He held Carter's gaze, unblinking. The man exhaled, as if considering how much to reveal. Then, with the same certainty he had shown at the shelter, He said, "You're not like the others, and after tonight, you'll never be the same again." The door slid shut behind them. Max moved to a facility with controlled steps, his sharp eyes scanning every surface. Every strange piece of machinery humming softly in the background. The air was sterile, too clean, carrying a faint scent of something metallic beneath the manufactured freshness. This was no ordinary home, no training center. It was something else entirely. Dr. Carter walked ahead, his movements efficient, unhurried. Max followed, his instincts screaming that he was stepping into the unknown. Every muscle in his body was tense, ready. The only sound between them was the software of automated systems running calculations he couldn't begin to understand. They entered a new space, a vast, circular room where the walls shimmered with constantly shifting data streams. At its center, a single chair sat beneath a suspended structure of glass and metal, wires twisting through its delicate frame like veins. The air carried a hum, not quite sound, not quite silence. Something in it made Max's skin prickle. Carter finally stopped, turning to face him. "You sense it, don't you?" Max didn't respond, but his stance shifted slightly. He was alert, calculating, watching. "You're special," Carter continued, his voice calm, measured. "Smarter than any dog I've seen. More observant, more controlled. The military couldn't handle that, could they?" Max's ear flicked. He had been part of their world once, trained, disciplined, but never fully theirs. He had always been too independent, unwilling to follow orders blindly. That defiance had cost him a place on the field. He had been discarded. And now he was here. Carter gestured toward the chair. "Sit." Max hesitated. Something in his bones told him this was more than a simple command. But Carter's gaze held no malice, only certainty. Max moved forward, stepping into the chair's base. The moment he did, the structure above came to life, tiny blue lights flickering as unseen mechanisms shifted. A faint pressure surrounded him, not physical, but something deeper. His mind, a pulse of sensation rippled through him. At first, it was nothing. Then a spark, a flicker of something beyond instinct, beyond training. It was thought, but not in the way he had ever known it. It was clarity, awareness. Images flashed in his mind, patterns, sequences, memories that weren't his but felt familiar. Language, numbers, concepts that had always existed just beyond his reach now settled into place with startling ease. He understood them. He understood everything. The pressure faded. Max blinked, exhaling sharply. The world felt different. He looked at Carter, really looked, and for the first time, he didn't just recognize him as a presence. He recognized him as a mind, a person filled with motives, calculations, expectations. Carter studied him carefully. "How do you feel?" Max's thoughts aligned faster than his body could react. He understood the question. He understood its depth, but speech was still beyond him. He gave a single nod. Carter's lips curled slightly. Approval. "Good." Max turned his head, eyes flickering to the screens on the walls. Data scrolled across them in streams of coded language. He understood it. The realization hit like a shock wave. He knew what he was looking at. Formulas, blueprints, calculations detailing neural enhancements. He recognized patterns in the numbers, saw the connections. Before, they would have meant nothing. Now, they spoke to him as clearly as the centrales of the world outside once had. He wasn't just intelligent. He was aware. He shifted his weight, testing his body. He was still himself. Still the same Max who had sat in that shelter, who had once trained under human command. But now, something more burned inside him, a new level perception that had never belonged to his kind. Carter stepped forward. "You're the first of your kind to experience this." He glanced toward the data streaming behind him. There were theories. There were tests. But no one was sure if it would work. His voice lowered slightly, a flicker of something deeper beneath the clinical tone. "You proved them wrong." Max met his gaze. He could see it now. The way Carter measured every reaction, every subtle shift in posture. He was a scientist, but he was also something more. He believed in this, in what Max had become. A soft chime echoed through the room. A voice, the same synthetic one from earlier, filled the space. Dr. Carter, external security has detected movement near the perimeter. Carter stiffened. His expression didn't change, but Max sensed it, a shift in his energy. Concern. He turned back to Max. We don't have much time. The words carried weight. Max understood. The knowledge settled into him as naturally as breath. This wasn't just an experiment. It was something bigger. And someone was coming for it. Carter moved toward a panel on the wall, fingers flying across its surface. We need to move. Max didn't need to be told twice. He was already one step ahead. Max's senses sharpened as the alert chimed again, its artificial tone cool and detached. But the air had changed. A tension hummed beneath the sterile precision of the facility, a disruption in the carefully maintained order. He felt it before Carter even spoke. "They're early," Carter muttered, his fingers still working across the panel, feeding commands into the system faster than any ordinary man could follow. Damn it. Max's gaze flicked to the screens. Security feeds lined the walls, a dozen shifting views of perimeter. The facility was isolated, surrounded by flat, empty terrain, but now shadows moved where there should have been none. A vehicle, sleek and unmarked, idled just beyond the boundary fence. For figures advanced in synchronized formation, their movements efficient, controlled. Not civilians, not random trespassers. This was an operation. Carter exhaled sharply. Cybergen. The name meant nothing to Max, but the way Carter said it told him everything. An enemy, a threat. Max moved toward the door, his body instinctively lowering into a controlled stance. His mind worked faster now, analyzing, predicting. These men weren't here to negotiate. They were here for him. Carter turned to him, his expression unreadable but his voice steady. "They can't take you." He hesitated. "They won't understand what you are. They'll use you." Max didn't need an explanation. He understood. These men were not here to destroy Carter's work. They were here to claim it, to turn it into something it was never meant to be. Outside, the first of the intruders reached the main entrance. The security system recognized the breach instantly, flashing red across the screens. The facility reacted as it was designed to, barriers reinforced, automated locks engaged. But these men had planned for that. One of them crouched near the control panel outside, his gloved hands moving with precision. The screen flickered, struggling against an intrusion of its own. Max glanced at Carter. "They'll get in," the scientist said grimly, answering the unspoken question. "I built this system to keep people out, not to fight trained infiltrators." He looked at Max then, really looked at him. "But you're different." A confirmation, not a question. Max turned back toward the hallway, instinct aligning with something deeper, something sharper. The facility's architecture unfolded in his mind, not just as space but as strategy. He could see the choke points, the vantage positions, the weaknesses in their approach. He had never thought this way before, but now it was as natural as sending prey in the wind. They weren't expecting him. Carter moved quickly, retrieving a small device from a nearby drawer. "Take this," he said, kneeling beside Max and attaching a slim metallic band around his collar. "It's a neural transmitter. It'll let you interface with Nova directly. She can guide you." The moment the band clicked into place, Max felt a presence, faint but unmistakable, like a whisper brushing against the edges of his mind. "Hello, Max." The synthetic voice of Nova murmured, no longer distant but inside him. "I will assist you." The first door seal broke. A hiss of escaping air echoed through the corridors. The intruders moved with careful precision, their weapons drawn, their postures tight with anticipation. Max didn't wait. He launched forward, silent as a shadow, slipping through an alternate passage that curved around the main entry point. His movements were precise, controlled. He wasn't just reacting. He was thinking, calculating. Through the neural link, Nova fed him real-time updates. Two approaching from the west corridor, armed, thermal vision active. Max adjusted. He took the high ground, leaping onto an overhead support beam, his paws silent against the steel. Below, two of the intruders swept the hall, their rifles raised. Their focus was forward, expecting resistance from Carter's lab. They didn't see Max until it was too late. He dropped with deadly accuracy, his weight crashing into first man's back. The impact sent him sprawling, his weapon skidding across the floor. The second turned, barely reacting before Max was on him, jaws clamping around his wrist with precision honed from years of training. Not a wild attack, controlled, efficient. The man dropped his weapon with a pained grunt, but Max was already moving. He had no intention of killing them. He didn't need to. Disable, disarm, control the battlefield. One down. The second scrambled to retrieve his fallen weapon, but a sudden flicker of movement from above caught his eye. Security turrets shifting into place. Carter had reactivated them. The man froze, knowing any movement would trigger a response he couldn't counter. Max was already gone. The remaining intruders were closing in on the lab. Max could see it unfolding, the way they moved in tandem, the calculated pace of their advance. They were professionals, but they were also working on incomplete information. They expected Carter's security measures. They didn't expect a dog who could think like them. Nova's voice was calm in his mind. Primary threat is the team lead. He's directing their movements. Isolate him, and their coordination will suffer. Max's eyes locked on the man in question, the one issuing silent signals, directing his team's formation. He was disciplined, experienced, but he had a weakness. He wasn't looking down. Max moved fast, slipping through a maintenance duct and emerging just as the man passed. A flash of movement, a blur of muscle and teeth. Max struck, targeting the back of the knee. The man crumpled, his balance shattered. A single misstep, and suddenly, the entire operation unraveled. The others hesitated, just for a moment, but it was enough. Carter's system surged back to life, automated defenses kicking in. The facility sealed itself, cutting off escape routes. In confusion, Max withdrew, slipping back toward Carter's position. The scientist was waiting, watching the monitors with quiet intensity. He turned as Max approached, taking the sight of him. Calm, uninjured, victorious. Carter exhaled, half disbelief, half admiration. You really are different. Max sat, his breathing steady, his mind sharp with a clarity he had never known before. He wasn't just a dog anymore. He was something else. And the world was about to find out. The facility was silent again, but it was the kind of silence that only came after chaos. The bodies of the intruders had been secured, their weapons stripped away, their mission failed. Carter stood over one of them, watching as the man groaned, his leg twisted from where Max had taken him down. There was no anger in Carter's expression, only calculation. They weren't here to kill, he said finally. They were here to take you. Max already knew. He had seen it in the way they moved, in their tactics. This was an assassination squad. It was an acquisition team. And that meant only one thing. Cybergen wasn't done. Carter ran a hand through his hair, exhaling sharply. This was a test. His voice was quiet, almost as if speaking the truth aloud made it more real. They wanted to see if you were real, if you were as advanced as the data suggested. He glanced at Max, something unreadable in his gaze. You proved them right. Max sat still, ears pricked forward listening, not just to Carter's words, but to everything around them, the hum of the facility systems, the faint rustling of the restrained intruders. His mind worked through possibilities faster than he would have thought possible just hours ago. They weren't safe. Carter must have come to the same conclusion. He moved quickly now, entering a command into the control panel. The lights flickered as something deep within the structure responded. A sequence Max couldn't yet fully comprehend, but understood instinctively. We need to leave, Carter said, his voice firm. They'll send more, stronger, and next time they won't hesitate. Max didn't argue. He rose, muscles coiled, already anticipating what was to come. The floor beneath them vibrated as the facility's lockdown lifted, allowing them access to an escape route buried beneath the structure. Carter led the way, moving through the dimly lit corridor with practiced urgency. The walls were lined with sleek, reinforced panels, humming faintly with stored energy. Max understood now. This wasn't just a lab. It was a vault, a place built to contain something revolutionary. Him. Nova's voice entered his mind again, calm yet insistent. External communication intercept detected. Cybergen is deploying additional forces. Carter cursed under his breath. They're moving faster than I expected. Max's instincts flared. He knew what was coming. More soldiers, more weapons, more people who saw him as an asset instead of a living being. And he knew with complete certainty that he would not be caged again. They reached a reinforced door at the corridor's end. Carter placed his palm against the scanner, and the metal slid open with a quiet hiss, revealing a hidden transport bay. A sleek, unmarked vehicle sat in the center, its surface matte black, its engines humming softly. This was not some ordinary escape plan. It had been prepared. Carter didn't hesitate. He climbed into the driver's seat, motioning for Max to follow. The German shepherd leapt inside, landing smoothly beside him. The moment the doors sealed, the vehicle lurched forward, accelerating through an underground passageway. Max turned his gaze to the rear display screen. The facility security feed showed new figures breaching the perimeter. More soldiers, more machines. Too many. They would have never stood a chance staying behind. Carter's hands tightened on the controls. "This isn't over," he murmured. Max already knew that. As they emerged into the open night, the city lights flickering in the distance, Max felt something new settle inside him. Not fear, not uncertainty. Purpose. He had spent his life as a tool, shaped by human hands for tasks they decided for him. But now, for the first time, he had something no one had ever given him before. A choice, and he intended to make it count.